Welcome to Masonic Youth Television. I'm the super rad Wayman Crowder, and here I have with me as my guest, most worshipful brother and past Grand Master, Rich Martin. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How did you get involved with Freemasonry?
Actually, it's the way I got involved in Freemasonry is somewhat of a tragic story. What happened for me is in 1997, I had a 24-year-old daughter named Valerie who got murdered. And when she got murdered, I naturally had to arrange to have a place to have her buried and do all these things that I never expected to do. However, I had a very close friend of mine, and he happened to be the master of Tigard Ornoma Masonic Lodge in Tigard. And so this friend of mine, Paul, he came to me and he said, Rich, I know you have to bury your daughter. And it just so happens that our lodge has some cemetery plots up at Skyline Cemetery. And if you would like to make arrangements to buy them, the lodge will sell them to you at a very, very discounted price. So I said, well, Paul, that's great. So I arranged to get back with Paul, and he sold me, there were 8 plots up at Skyline, and he sold me all 8 plots for a very reduced price. And so we went through the process of having a service for my daughter and doing all that stuff. And then, you know, we buried her up at the Skyline Cemetery. And as I was up at the cemetery walking around, I noticed these symbols. Masonic symbols. They were everywhere. And so where Valerie got buried was in the Masonic portion of that cemetery. And so I went back to my friend Paul, and I said, Paul, I said, isn't this the Masonic portion of the cemetery? He says, yes, it is. He says, well, if I'm going to be buried there, because we had 8 plots, shouldn't I be a Mason? And so Paul got back to me and he said, Rich, I've been waiting years for you to ask that question. And so that's how I became a Mason. And at a time in my life when things, as you might imagine, were extremely tragic. You know, losing a child is something no parent should ever go through. But once I joined that lodge, I had a host of friends, and it was instantaneous. And I had a lot of people that buoyed me up in a time of great despair. So that's how I became a Mason, and that's probably why I'm so passionate about Masonry today.
How has Freemasonry shaped your life?
Oh, Freemasonry has had a tremendous impact on my life. Once I became a Freemasonry, I was associated with a group of men who I learned over a gradual period of time were men that I could trust completely. You know, part of that trust came as a result of going through the degrees of Masonry, because there's a natural progression in those degrees that you lean more on your brothers, you know, all the time. And you know, we use the word brother. That's our title in Freemasonry. You know, if you're a Freemason, you're my brother, and it is considered a fraternity. But how it changed my life was amazing, because, you know, earlier I talked about losing my daughter, and I had immediately all these friends who helped me, you know, and so I gradually, one of the things I learned to do is whenever a Mason, whenever I was asked to do something Masonically, the answer was always yes. Now, this didn't sit right with my wife all the time, but, but I did say yes. And so I got involved in committees, you know, with the Grand Lodge of Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of Oregon. And as luck would have it, and through nothing that I ever did, I managed to become noticed by the folks in the Grand Line, and I managed to go through the Grand Line and become a Grand Master. And being a Grand Master is something I wish every Mason could do, although it's somewhat impossible. But in becoming a Grand Master, I had the opportunity to meet some of the finest men in the world. And they were from all levels of life, you know. And that's one of the things that Freemasonry prides itself on. We use the tools of Freemasonry. The level is a tool that's used, you know, in building, but we're all on the level. In Lodge, we have a certain hierarchy that we observe, but out of Lodge, we're all equals, 100%. And so I had this opportunity to travel extensively. I visited all of the Grand Lodges in the western states, you know, Alaska, Hawaii, California. And I also had an opportunity to take care of one of my wife's bucket list items, and that was to go to Ireland. So as Grand Master, I went to Ireland, and I got to meet the Grand Master of Ireland, and we just had an absolutely wonderful time over there. But I would say the biggest change for me was an internal, not an external change. And as we go through the degrees of Masonry, and I don't know if I mentioned trust, you know, I learned to trust my brothers. And elsewhere in life, you know, people gab and they talk and they, you know, they say different things about people that perhaps they shouldn't. Well, that's something we don't do in Freemasonry. We don't talk behind a brother's back. If one of my brothers says something to me in confidence, that goes nowhere else. You know, it's between him and me and God. And so it's given me the wherewithal to be able to, you know, not talk about other people, which is something, you know, we shouldn't do, you know, unless it's something positive. So it's changed my life phenomenally. Today I'm involved in lots of Masonic activities, but to be honest, in simple terms, it has made my life much better through trusting other people, other Masons. So.
Do you have any advice for anybody maybe looking to join Freemasonry?
Well, perhaps. One of the things that happened to me in my life as a young man is my parents got divorced when I was 4 years old. So I grew up without a dad, basically. And I know that there are a lot of men out there today in that same situation. And to me, having somebody to emulate, you know, is something that I missed out on. And when I joined Freemasonry, I found men that had great character, you know, men that I wouldn't hesitate to put my life in their charge. And so if that's something that a younger person is looking for, or anybody is looking for, you know, that's something they can find in Freemasonry. The other thing, you know, the other advice I would give them, you know, it's not healthy for any of us to be totally alone. You know, we need to develop some sort of social life. And that comes automatically when you become a Freemason. They have social activities that are fun and exciting for everyone. They give you if you become a Freemason, you have the ability to travel throughout the world and be accepted in a Masonic lodge anywhere. And so, now I could say this: once you're a Freemason, you're never alone. And the other thing, I mentioned a little bit is character. And as you progress through the degrees of Freemasonry, there are two things that happen. One is you learn more about ancient craft Freemasonry, but the other is that you learn about yourself. As you go through the degrees, you are asked to look at yourself internally and basically make yourself a better man. And by making yourself a better man, you become a better son, a better employee, a better father, a better grandfather, and it actually helps you in your life, gives you more of a focus, It tells you where you should be going. And as you develop the innate ability to trust in God rather than to your finite self, your life becomes much better. So that would be my advice. I don't know if there's a little bit in there that could be said, but yeah.
Thank you for being here,
Oh,
giving us a nice interview.
well, I thank you very kindly.